Hi there. Today I'm going to begin my series on Quality, an inquiry into excellence by Robert M. Pirsig, edited by Wendy K. Pirsig, his wife. This book came out about 6 months ago at the end of April, and it's a compilation, unpublished and selected writings by the author of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. And there is a couple of things I'll just read here quickly. From the author of the inspiring classic Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, an original collection of Robert M. Pirsig's writings on the central theme of his thought, quality, featuring long-awaited selections from his unpublished works. And then there's a quote in here that they've chosen of Robert M. Pirsig: "The ultimate goal in the pursuit of excellence is enlightenment." And that is kind of a loaded quote because we're going to find out a little bit more in this book, just as a teaser about Robert M. Pirsig's spirituality. And it's very interesting because in this little corner of the internet, this is one of the main themes, right? So I want to, for anyone who's come here interested in this book because of Robert Pirsig, I just want to let you know that my channel, while is extremely inspired by him, and I relate everything back to him for the most part, or to his work, this is not a Pirsig channel per se. It's more of a contribution to a community and a personal journey, and I'm no expert by any means still, after doing this for 3 years, in Robert M. Pirsig's work. I'm just sort of very interested, thinking that what he has to say is something we could really use now for a lot of reasons, and so I'm very happy to begin a little exploration of this book. Now here's how I'm going to do it. There is a good audio book of this out there, and you can, it's on Amazon, of course. If you have a Scribd subscription, it's on there as well. So I'm not going to read the whole book as an audiobook, but I am going to read the whole book for context because I'm going to comment as I go. My commentary is going to be rather informal. In Lila, I wrote it out and kind of, really thought about it. This I'm going to react to, so let's just say this is sort of a reaction video. I suspect it's going to go on for some time because I plan to, both read and comment, and that might take a while. So let's just delve into this a little bit. So on the, I think this is called the flyleaf. There is a picture by Robert M. Pirsig, and at the time he was probably 48 years old. And this picture was taken by a local photographer who I looked up, and here he is. And he looks like someone who would take a picture, who'd be the photographer of an iconic image of the author of Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. The other pictures, and here's why I recommend that you get the hard copy, is that the way that the pictures are placed in this book is very thoughtful. The photographs are beautiful. They are all photographs of Robert, and well, here's the motorcycle right in the middle of it. That's in the Smithsonian now. And there's really beautiful photos, black and white photos of Robert M. Pirsig's motorcycle maintenance tools placed in strategic locations throughout the book. There's his glasses and some other thing, some chisel. I don't know why you'd need a chisel for a motorcycle, but the rest of you probably do. Maybe it isn't a chisel at all. Okay, so anyway, it came out in 2022, earlier this year, Mariner Books. His wife edited it, and it's dedicated to Jim Landis, who is the one publisher out of the 120 who agreed to publish 121. Publishers rejected it, and Jim Landis is the one who agreed to publish it. So I've read this a few times. There's going to be quite a bit of biographical information in here, some that you hadn't heard before, maybe, if you are interested in Pirsig. One site I recommend is the site of Henry Gurr, who was a professor with Pirsig in Montana, and he also knew Sarah Vinke, who is the person who suggested that, who put the idea of quality in Pirsig's head, and has also written a book about Sarah Vinke, and he's got a great site that links to all the Pirsig material, pretty much, and one piece is a timeline, a biographical timeline, so that's interesting to see if you're reading the biographical information in here. And I'll put a link to that. And he has an assistant called David who posts on Twitter almost every day some kind of link having to do with Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance. So go ahead and follow him if you're interested in Pirsig's work. Lots of other resources as well, and Wendy Pirsig mentions a couple in here. All right, so table of contents. Preface, Bob's Quest. Introduction, The Right Way. Part 1, Quality. Part 2, Values. Part 3, The Metaphysics of Quality. Part 4, Dharma. Part 5, Attitude. And then editor's acknowledgments, credits, and index. So like I said, I'm going to read the book and comment. But if you want just an audiobook, again, it's available. Okay, so preface, Bob's Quest by Wendy K. Pirsig. After dark on a cold New Year's night in 1980, my husband, Robert Pirsig, and I pulled into a casino near Carson City, Nevada. We were on our way east from San Francisco following the funeral of Bob's son, Chris, who at the age of 23 had been murdered in a street mugging 6 weeks before. Those of you who are fans of Pirsig know that Chris was murdered. Already know that because there's an afterword in books and in the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, or I can't remember, the different editions mention it in different places. But Chris, of course, is the son who accompanied Pirsig on his motorcycle trip in 1968. The casino gave us a decent supper at a low price, and that cheered us a little. Bob recounted good memories of the days when he and his first wife, Nancy, worked as dealers at a casino in Reno back in 1954, the year they were married. Now, that's an interesting... I did not know that he did that, so that was exciting for me to learn that he was a Keno... he ran the Keno show over there at a casino. That night, with the holidays ended, the place was quiet. Bob decided to play Keno, sometimes known as the Chinese lottery, the game he ran 26 years before. He picked up the special Chinese brush and ink and marked off the combination spelling Christopher on a Keno card, a thin sheet of square newsprint with numbers and orange squares. With gestures that still felt familiar, he made marks looking like little ship sails. So that's a little confusing, the little ship sails, but I found this picture of a Keno card that is exactly what she's describing, and with the markings exactly like she describes, and they are quite beautiful. Assuming he spelled out Christopher with the numbers that correspond to the letters. When I was a Keno dealer, making those little marks was a way to find quality on the job, he said. Now that really blew me away when I read that, because that means, and he's going to describe this a little bit more, that means that whatever you're doing at any time, you can see it through a lens that is entertaining, that is artistic, that is more than the mundane task that you have to do. And that's an attitude, I think, that the notion of that really blows me away, because I think of so many times jobs I had when I was younger that I just, was very negative about, didn't do a good job, tried to get away with as little work as possible, and looked at the clock. And that just implies a whole different way of seeing things. At the window, a young cashier with a pleasant round face copied our ticket with her brush. Like Bob, she made triangular blocks on the numbers. She wrote $1, which we played, and 9, the number of spots marked, with her own distinctive style, quality. She smiled at us in a friendly way. We played to win $50,000 and lost, but we felt better than we had when we'd arrived that night. So the small act of, the brushstrokes and remembering the past make the situation, the tragic pall in the room, it lightens the heaviness that they're sharing between them. We stood a few minutes watching the blackjack dealers before heading to our motel. They all dealt cards with smooth, trance-making motions. Like the Keno dealer, everybody finds their quality operating in their job, said Bob as we left. And watching the Keno dealers do that flow state kind of dealing, keeping it even as possible, maybe making the cards line up very evenly so there's a beautiful fan, or whatever they're doing, they're finding quality in this mundane task of dealing cards. Assuming he's talking about people in the casino, because I think the problem is many people do not find quality in their job. And the implications of that and the attitude itself is quite large. What is it like when people don't find quality? He often made remarks like this. Quality was on his mind. The purpose of this book, published 5 years after Bob's death in 2017, is to offer a small section of writings on the central theme of his life's work, quality, a concept that is revealed but sometimes overshadowed in his published work by colorful descriptions of motorcycling through the American West, engine maintenance, a mental health crisis, and a father-son relationship. So I think that's very true. I think one thing about Zen, and she's specifically right now talking about Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, I would say that philosophically minded people tend to go for Lila, and they tend to go for the, what do the levels in Lila mean? So that's another way that quality gets overshadowed. But for people who read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, it gets overshadowed by the novel itself. And sometimes people very frequently say, this section is just too much, but I love the story. The people who like the quality, there's something about the way it's presented in Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance that kind of gets lost in Lila. There's a freshness to that discovery, let's just say, and I think Pirsig would agree with that. All right, so that's all I'm going to talk about. One thing I want to say is that is the most important aspect to me, because I think that the notion of quality, understanding quality, and the attitude that he pointed to is probably the way forward in general where we are now. And certainly we'll talk more about that as we go through this book. In the next section, he's going to talk about, we begin to talk about quality itself in the next section called Quality is Ever Present, but I'm going to wait until the next video for that because I've talked quite enough and I don't want to make these rambling and long. So I hope that makes sense, and I will see you next time.